To create balance requires skill, the kind of skill that comes from years of experience, years of experimenting. You have to have made mistakes to know how to avoid them. Balance requires vision. You need to know where you're going and where you came from. It takes steadiness and bravery. And most of all, true balance requires mastery. My name is Andy Watts, Master Distiller for Three Ships Whisky. The concept for the Masters Collection started in 2015, each year to create something different, to showcase our ingenuity and ability to craft these unique whiskies. This year is number 5 of the Masters Collection, and it's an 11-year-old single malt finished in seasoned Shiraz casks. I hope you enjoy this release as much as I enjoyed creating it.
Just like that, the 5th Masters Collection live whiskey sale is now live. Welcome to it. My name is Loiso Mtabuka, and today I am going to be your host. I'm very, very excited here today because it's an auspicious occasion. Imagine the 5th one, right? Equal parts creativity, complexity. There's an undeniable artistry to every bottle of Three Ships Masters Collection whiskey, crafted at the James Sedgwick Distillery. Now, the most amazing part of this, it's a celebration of this, we're proud to introduce this year's Master Collection release at the Norval Foundation, the home of exceptional South African art and the perfect venue to share our perfectly crafted balance. Now, the most amazing part of today is that behind me, everyone's been waiting for today, and I've been personally waiting for today. When you look at this wall behind me, that's what everyone is excited about. Everyone's hopped onto the website, and there are 400 bottles behind me of the 11-year-old single malt, and it's the Shiraz cask finish that we're showing off today. And I'm sure at home everyone is excited. I'm excited. And the best part about today is that you can get interactive and get in on the fun by simply hopping onto the website. And this live wall behind us, you can pick your bottle, and those two amazing guys there behind us, they're going to be walking around. As you click your bottle on the live wall, they'll be collecting it for you, preparing it for you, and sending it home for you. And the best part about this year is that everything is mobile responsive. So if you're on your desktop, if you're on your phone, if you're on your tablet, you're going to be able to purchase and get in on it today. But make sure you download some SnapScan and also get a zapper to be able to finish and complete your purchase. Now, it wouldn't be a Masters Collection, and I need to emphasize, the 5th one, without Master Distiller Andy Watts. Sir, how are you doing?
You're so good, and it's great to have you with us this year.
Listen, I can tell you, I am bubbling under as well, because when you were telling me off air about what happens every single year when you guys have the Masters Collection, people are excited, people are on the site. Tell me how it goes and how you're feeling.
Yeah, listen, this is definitely one of the highlights of Three Ships Whisky's calendar, and one of the highlights of mine. And, you know, a concept we started back in 2015, and it's just grown since then, so much so that, you know, we've managed to crash the site on a few occasions in the past. Wow. And each year's a different challenge, but one we look forward to, and I can't believe a year's gone by.
Now, I know that whenever someone is a connoisseur or someone is a collector of something, it creates a lot of excitement. And we were also talking about the process of arriving at today, right? Now, it's an 11-year process, and no one can take for granted what that process is. You're also telling me how some of the most monumental buildings have been built while you were working on this piece of art. So tell me a little bit about the process and how it feels to get here today.
Yeah, I mean, it's... You know, I sometimes joke with my marketing team that whiskey's not on tap.
Yes.
You know, you can't suddenly decide today you want something which is 10, 12, 15 years old. That's decisions you had to make 10, 12, 15 years ago.
Yes.
And the same with this particular single malt here. It started its life as single malt spirit, distilled from malted barley, twice distilled copper pot stills, then matured for a minimum of 3 years in oak casks before we could call it whiskey.
Yes.
And then after that, looking at the quality of the spirit, the whiskey, to how we would then develop it, and would it remain as a plain American oak finish whiskey, or would we go on to give it a a little added twist like we did with this one,
Yes.
which is the Shiraz cask finish.
Now things are moving at the back here. Like we've hardly literally started, and the guys are hard at work. So once again, don't forget, you can go into this whiskey live wall, pick your bottle. It will be prepared for you. Download SnapScan, download Zapper, complete that purchase. And now, Andy, I really want to get to tasting the product because I'd love for you to take me through it. Now, the one thing that I want to find out from you before we get there, though, right? It's a unique blend. It's a unique, a number of elements have come together to make this amazing product come together as well. There's a process to that. There's times where, for instance, you might have questioned where it's going as well. I'd love to get into your head a little bit about that as well.
Yeah, I think when you're working with any cask finish, the idea is to try and get an indication of what was previously in that cask.
Yes.
For example, in this case, the Shiraz. The Shiraz mustn't overpower the whiskey.
Yes.
But you must be able to experience nuances from the Shiraz wine itself,
Yes.
which we then pull from the cask. So, when you're in that, let's say, finishing period, in this case it was 3 years, but when you're in that finishing period, you're looking at the whiskey quite often just to make sure that you're still okay, you're not going to past the tipping point, let's say.
Yes.
So it really is. It's not just about putting the whiskey down, forgetting about it, and then waking up tomorrow and saying, hey, I'm going to do this now. It constantly, you're constantly looking at the whiskey. It's a living organism. It is something which develops in the wood. It changes character. So you've really got to be on top of it the whole time.
I've got you. I want to get it in now. I'm sure the guys are ready. Once again, guys, while you're online right now, don't forget, you can hop onto the live whiskey wall. Pick your bottle, we'll prepare it for you. It's mobile friendly. We're across a number of platforms this year that are all responsive. And here it comes, man, that amazing moment that I've been waiting for. Now, I've got to start with the glass, Andy. This glass is amazing. Like, I've never tasted anything out of a glass like this. You mind taking me through what is it?
Well, firstly, I'm shaking a little bit more than normal because this is a Norland glass.
Yes.
And these are incredibly expensive works of art, really. If you look at it, you'll see the whiskey almost looks as though it's floating in air inside the glass, because it is really a glass within a glass.
Yes.
I would say this isn't, to me, the ideal tasting glass.
Yes.
But it's an excellent glass for evaluating the whiskey and for drinking from.
Yes.
When you're looking to taste, when we evaluate the whiskey, we look for something with a slightly narrower nose to the glass,
Yes.
so that you concentrate the flavors at the point of the nose, where the drinking glasses tend to be a little bit wider,
Yes.
and the aromas can then disappear at the side. Yeah.
Now, there's obviously quite a few characteristics to this, I'm a whiskey drinker, but you definitely have a lot more experience than me in what goes into this.
Yeah, well, I think, if you look at this, I think the first most important thing is that whiskey is incredibly subjective.
Yes.
So I'm going to give you some tasting notes of what I experience.
Sure.
You might not find everything I talk about,
Yes.
but I'm hoping it leads you in a general direction.
Got you.
And I mean, the first thing we can look at with this is just this incredible color.
Yes.
This almost rose gold. It's, picked up that beautiful redness from the Shiraz, which has carried itself through into the final product. And if we nose the whiskey, which is what we normally do, we use our senses, then we've got that interplay of, to me, cherries, roasted nuts, almost, Christmas pudding coming through there. That DNA smokiness, which
Yes,
we get.
I was about to say that. I can definitely smell that.
Yeah, the smokiness is there, but it's a subtle smoke. It's
Yes.
not something which is overpowering the whiskey. And you've got then almost like the braai, the barbecued meat.
Yes.
Coming through, and then a little bit of fruitiness, orange zestiness at the end there on the nose. Now, if we're tasting whiskey professionally, we would probably add a small dash of water just to open up the flavors.
Yes.
This one specifically being at 51.4% alcohol by volume. It is a little bit stronger than your normal releases.
Yes.
But in this case, we will taste it at full strength.
Sure.
Because I'm hoping that's what you can pick up some
Yeah,
of.
I definitely want to taste it first.
Okay. So let's have a little taste, and let's hold it in our mouth for a few seconds. So
I can definitely taste the nose that you were talking about, the fruitiness Can definitely taste that. The smokiness as well is coming through.
Yeah. So I think in this one we've got those, the red fruit, the typical red fruit notes coming through with a little bit of white pepper, a little bit of licorice which is lingering around there at the back of the mouth. The smoke is definitely prominent again. So again, that's why I mentioned the DNA of our Masters collection is on this smoky, peaty based single malt, and almost some treacly raisin sweetness coming through as it stays in my mouth.
Now, like for instance, some of the flavors, and there's quite a lot of flavors that you've put into this, right? For me, it feels very balanced though, because it doesn't feel like there's a certain element that is overpowering the other one. Was that what you were looking for in terms of were you looking to strike a balance?
I think that's the secret. It really is about, and some people might say, no, listen, you've gone too far. But, it was a decision we made consciously as a team. I kind of led the team and said, I think it's right now. And then we had tasting sessions. And also we decided what strength we were going to release it to, 51.4% percent alcohol by volume. And that's something when you've got this much flavor in the whiskey, you can actually push the alcohol levels a little bit higher.
Yes.
And the alcohol doesn't come through, but more that, as you talk about the balance between the fruits and the whiskey itself. And, I don't know about you, but I've still got this lingering, nice, warm, soft mouthfeel, which sticks with the smoke, which is still sticking there.
Look, I'm just happy to be one of the first people to taste this. Never mind like how it tastes, but it tastes amazing. For me, like I said, there's all these elements that are like bursting in my mouth at the same time. And I hope you can get yourself a bottle of this, and it's flying quite quickly here at the back.
Well, I mean, we produced just 2,994 of these bottles, of which the first 400 always go on the online sale.
Yes.
So that's why we've got the activity going. And then the balance of the bottles, they'll go into trade probably around about the second week in November, 9th of November. And that's kind of an added incentive too for the people to, like you say, you want to try that whiskey first before it goes into general retail. So yeah, it's a really clever concept, which is working really, really well.
Listen, we are definitely striking the balance here, and I'm excited. I hope you're on the site right now, getting your hands on one of these bottles. Don't forget, you can also check us out on social media. It's at 3ShipsSA with the hashtag. Let me get the hashtag right, because I do not want to miss it. We want to trend today, so please do the right thing. It's hashtag Shiraz Cask Finish. That's what you can send your tweets at with us later on. We're going to be asking Andy all about this amazing product. But talking about matching things and getting the most exceptional balance. Today we are at probably one of the most amazing venues that I've gotten to be at. It's called the Norval Foundation. Take a look at this. It's all about the 5th Masters Collection live whiskey sale, hanging out with none other than Andy Watts here. You can fire all of your questions. We're at 3ShipsSA. You can use the hashtag Shiraz Cask Finish. We want to trend today, so please send us all the questions, and I'm sure you've got tons of questions that you'd like to ask our master distiller. And we're going to get right into it, Andy. The first question comes from Dan Cooper on Twitter. He says, in your opinion, what makes a good whiskey?
Sure, it's an interesting question, and maybe the answer I'm going to give is not what he's expecting.
Yes.
And that to me is, I think emotion plays a big role in making a good whiskey.
Yes.
Because it's how you're feeling, the mood you're in, the people you're with, can turn something which people might say they perceive as being an average whiskey into something which is very good.
Yes.
So obviously there's certain parts of the process which you've got to complete correctly.
Yes.
But I think at the end of the day, if you're with the right people, you can have an amazing time, and then all good whiskey, or all whiskey is good, if taken and consumed responsibly. I think one of the, the kind of analogies I always like to use is watching the Boks play rugby or the Proteas play cricket.
Yes.
If they win, everything tastes better
Yes.
than if they lose. So if you're in a good space, then I think you'll find the whiskey will just complement that space you're in.
I agree. If you're feeling great, everything feels amazing, keep sending us those tweets. It's at 3ShipsSA and use the hashtag Shiraz Cask Finish. We've got another one. Kobus Marius would like to know, what's unusual about this particular release?
Sure. Listen, cask finishes are not new.
Yes.
The industry has been doing cask finishes for quite a while, and ourselves as well, but mainly with sherry, types of sherry. This is only our second red wine finish,
Yes.
following on the Pinotage in 2016. So I think that makes this a little bit special. This is uncharted waters for us.
Yes.
It's what our promise was to the consumer with the Masters Collection, that we would try to bring out something each year which was unique, different, and that's, I think, what really makes this whiskey so special.
I agree with you. It's incredibly special. I'm going to continue tasting it. And already we've sold 357 bottles. Can you imagine that? Like, I've been looking at the guys behind us, right? They have not stopped. Literally. Like, I've been like, okay, when are they going to stop and take a rest? It's not happening yet.
Seriously, that's 43 bottles to go.
Yeah, we've got 43 bottles to go, so do the right thing right now. Get onto the site, get your bottle. The wall behind me is live, like I mentioned earlier on. Make sure you download SnapScan and Zapper, because that's going to be important for you to finish off your purchase. I've got another tweet coming through. Annalise Dutoy says, how did the Masters Collection come about? Whose idea was it, and how did you come to it?
Yeah, this is, again, fantastic questions which are coming through, because this one is it's a story all on its own.
Yes.
I've got quite a lot of friends who are whiskey followers, and
Yes.
they're my passion. If I think about it, this is my work, so I'm supposed to be passionate about it.
Yeah.
These are guys who hold down jobs, families, children to play with, and yet they still find time to be totally committed to whiskey.
Yes.
And they kind of always known that I've had whiskies stashed away. And it was way back, probably 2000. Yeah, it was actually just after we'd had the 125th anniversary for the James Sedgwick Distillery.
Yes.
And a couple of these friends started to be a little bit naughty, and they knew I had whiskies which were in maturation, which were special, and they couldn't understand why we weren't releasing them.
Yes.
So they actually started a social media campaign called Distill Are You Listening? Hashtag Distill Are You Listening?
Wow.
And it trended right to the CEO's desk, and he kind of said, but why aren't we doing this? Let's try it. And that was the start, 2015, with the 3 Ships 10-year-old single malt PX Cask Finish, just 800 bottles. Took us around about 6 hours or so to sell those bottles at that stage. And then, is it going to be a success, isn't it? And we continued the year after that. So really it was an idea which came from the consumers out there. It's, it just kind of took us to that tipping point to the next step.
I guess it proves when you listen, amazing things happen, And I'm going to listen to everyone who's on social media right now, getting your tweets, and it's at 3ShipsSA. Shiraz Cask Finish is the hashtag. Olivia Zuniga is asking, what's the most important thing you've learned during your expansive career? Because you've had an amazing career.
Yeah, it's a lifetime, and it's been a great journey. But I think, what have I learned? Wow. So much. I mean, I've become a much more patient person than I was.
Yes.
Especially if you want to see an
Especially if you need to wait for something for 11 years.
Yeah. So when I started as a youngster, definitely didn't have the patient levels I've got now. And yeah, I think it's have an open mind. Be open to anything. Like, don't think this can't work until you tried it.
So true. That is so true and so profound. Please keep your tweets coming in at 3ShipsSA. It's hashtag Shiraz Cask Finish. We're checking out this amazing single malt. It's 11 years old and the finish is amazing. We're going to be chatting to some amazing people later on as well. We're going to be telling us how it all came together. We're still taking your questions though. Jaden Ruiz is asking, would you say South African whiskey can go toe to toe with international whiskies?
Well, I think that's quite an easy one to answer because,
Yeah.
the international consumers or competitions and our peers in the industry are telling us that we're making exceptionally good whiskey here in South Africa. So, I think it is that perception. It's changing our own perceptions that what we do in South Africa can be as good as what's done internationally.
Yes.
We might not have the 500 years of tradition. Our industry is very young in South Africa.
Yes.
But what we do have is we have the skills, the tenacity, that kind of will to make things work.
Yeah.
And yeah, our whiskies, we've had 3 world titles in the last 10 years on our whiskies, 2 with Bain's Cape Mountain Whiskey and 1 with 3 Ships at the World Whiskey Awards. And both of our South African whiskies, 3 Ships in particular, have taken golds at most of the international competitions throughout the world over that past decade.
It's an amazing, amazing product, and it definitely is award-winning. We've still got lots coming up. In a bit, though, we're going to be chatting to someone that I really am looking forward to meet. And as we take all of your tweets, keep them coming in at 3ShipsSA. It's hashtag Shiraz Cask Finish. Please use the hashtag. Cameron Graves is asking, tell us more about some of the other special people who make this whiskey.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I kind of sit here and I get all the lauds, the plaudits for being the brains behind it. But, there is a dedicated team back at the distillery which allows me the time and the opportunity to do this sort of thing, which I enjoy. So, there's some of those guys who've come along the road with me for the last 20 years or so. It's difficult to name a name and not feel that you're leaving somebody out of this. But, people like Johan Dreyer, who heads up our maturation department, he makes sure that all of our whiskey goes into wood on time, comes out on time. A guy who, to my knowledge, has not had a day sick in that 20 years. Lennox, our forklift driver, Lennox Moao.
Yes.
He has not dropped one cask in the 28 years I've been directly involved at the distillery. So, yeah, there's a lot of unsung heroes. A lot of people you don't.
And I guess that would be a question that comes from me now is, with everyone that you've mentioned so far, the common theme for me, it feels like everyone loves what they do. And would you say that that's what characterizes your team and the people that work with you to put this together?
I think so. I think if anybody, takes the effort to come to the distillery, one of the first things you kind of notice when you come onto the site is how everything seems to have a place, and there's a place for everything. The guys are incredibly proud about what they do. They're incredibly proud of the distillery and our products, and it just, it then naturally progresses through to their work. So yeah, it's an incredible team. You can't say thank you to them enough, really.
I've got some more tweets coming our way. Hardy, Moritz, as well as the Whiskey Maker. Any insights into what other possibilities there were for this year's Master Collection? And so glad this one made the cut. Loved it when you shared it last year. And he's definitely using the hashtag Shiraz Cask Finish. Love that. And also adding the 3ShipsSA. Yeah,
we took a slightly different approach to this one. And we didn't plan it.
Yes.
About a year ago now, for 3Ships' birthday, we invited a few of our loyal fans to the distillery for an evening, and Hardy was one of those guys. And I did a tasting which included some work in progress, as we call it, from my secret store 13. And while the tasting was going on, we then, just on the spur of the moment, said, okay, let's ask the audience, which one of these 3 whiskies do they enjoy the most that evening?
Yes.
And that evening, they actually chose this particular whiskey, which was still work in progress then.
Wow.
And we decided, okay, all 3 of them were in the running. Yes. I'm not going to tell you the other 2, Hardy, because that cuts my options down for next year. yeah, I mean, it was, again, another first to spur of the moment. Let's include the consumer.
Yes.
Let's and I think it's possibly something we might continue doing going forward. I'm not saying we will, but, it was actually great to have whiskey lovers there and for them to be able to share their thoughts on what we were unsure about. Would it be a winner or not?
And it definitely is a winner. We've got more tweets coming through. Riskus Leroux, I'd love to hear your take on how South Africa's warmer climate affects the type of whiskies that you can make and how quickly you can mature them as well.
Yeah, well, I think, a lot of the New World countries like South Africa, Taiwan, Japan, Australia, our climates are a little bit warmer than, the traditional whiskey-making countries of Scotland, Ireland, and maybe North America.
Yes.
And definitely we have, during maturation, there is a portion of the alcohol which is lost through evaporation. We call that the angel share.
Yes.
And we lose on average between 4.5% and 5% per year.
Oh, wow.
Where Scotland will lose on average 1.5% to 2%.
Yes.
So you can say at least double we are losing each year. And what that means in simple terms is that the interaction between the wood, the cask, and the atmosphere is just happening a lot quicker.
Got you.
Which means that in South Africa, our whiskies do tend to portray themselves as being a little bit older, a little bit more softer, smoother, mature at a younger age.
Got you.
So, that is the secret. There are other challenges because of our climate here, which we've had to work with. In the beginning, when I came back from my time in Scotland,
Yes.
it was kind of, plug and play, but it's not like that. It was actually, instead of trying to tell the climate to work with you, it was turning it the other way around and saying, okay, I'm not going to beat the climate, so how can I make the climate work for me?
And that's what I love. Behind the ingenuity, it hasn't been about taking what the environment's giving you. It's working best with that environment as well. It's really great. I've got another tweet from Tigela Noni. He says, how do you think South African whiskey, and in particular this year's Masters blend, ranks with other whiskies in the world?
Yeah, I think that touches, the question a few previous questions back when, our whiskies, through our peers, through international competitions, are recognized worldwide as being up there amongst the best.
Yes.
Again, whiskey incredibly subjective. There are so many whiskies out there. The whole fun of whiskey is that journey.
Yes.
A responsible journey where you can actually find the whiskey you like. Lots of people will say, they're not crazy about the heavy smoke, peatiness which you get in some of the Islay style whiskies.
Yes.
Others prefer the lighter, Speyside-y, fruity style of whiskey which you can get. And it really is about finding for that particular day, your particular palate, what you think is something which is special. So this particular one, again, it's very difficult for me to create a whiskey which is going to make everybody happy.
Yeah. No, I'm happy. Every time you mention it, I take a sip.
I think that's a good idea.
There you go. Thank you.
But, this particular one makes me happy, and I'm hoping if it makes me happy, the people who are out there will find a time and a place to try this whiskey and then to appreciate, the difference in whiskies. Because it really is. If it's a hot summer's day, the style of whiskey you drink could be different to a cold winter's evening.
True.
A hot summer's day, maybe you want a tall glass, lots of ice, and, a mixer. Cold winter's evening, maybe it's a log fire with a single malt, no ice, no water, just like this. So, it really is about that mood, that emotion, which we talked about earlier, and finding your sweet spot, what you enjoy.
Please find your sweet spot on this wall right behind me. For last I checked, we had about 43 bottles left. We're going to take a few more of your tweets, and then in a bit, we're going to hang out with a really, really special person. Esmaria_ZA says, most of the Masters collection is an early maturation compared to the traditional. Are there some older ones in the pipeline, or is this where you see the market for this?
Yeah. Going back to what we talked about maturation, how it happens quickly in this country, we are working on older products.
Yes.
Again, going back, we released South Africa's first single malt in 2003, a 10-year-old product.
Yeah.
We started releasing the 10-year-old single malt as a permanent member of the range in 2015, which means even those whiskies are now coming up to 21 years old. So, it's difficult to just pluck a number out of the air.
Yeah.
It has actually physically got to stay in that cask for that amount of time.
Yes.
So to answer the name, yes, there's definitely older whiskies which are in maturation.
Yes.
We have released under Baines a few 18-year-old whiskies. There's something special coming for Three Ships next year.
Yes.
I don't think it's a secret. We're looking to, if everything goes well, have a 21-year-old single malt for Christmas next year.
Oh, wow.
So the older whiskies will be coming. It's just you can't, time and tide waits for no man, but you can't speed it up.
You can't speed it up, definitely. Thank you so much for all of your tweets. We'll take more questions later on with Master Distiller Andy Watts. You can keep those tweets coming in at 3 Ships SA with the hashtag Shiraz Cask Finish. Now, talking about the actual product, for me, I keep touching on this. I keep tasting exceptional balance. And there's someone that I met recently who I didn't even know that I was seeing his work when I was driving down the Coke Bay Strip. And this guy's work is all there. He goes by the name Sipho Njengezi. And if you want to know what his work is all about, take a look at this.
It takes a lot to get the balance just right. When I'm searching for rocks, I find all shapes and sizes. Each rock represents something, part of my journey. Rock sculpturing is all about finding the balance, no matter what the odds are. The whole process is to focus. Stay focused, because the moment you lose your focus, it can all come crashing down. It's my zone. It's where I found peace. It's where I found clarity. It's where I connect with the world. The way I see it, if you want the installation to be stable and not quickly destroyed, each rock has to be placed carefully. When you find balance, you can create something beautiful, no matter what the odds. That's where I make my mark. My name is Sipho Njengezi, and I'm a stone artist.
Listen, Andy, I am blown away by what we're witnessing. It takes incredible mastery, incredible patience, incredible focus to do this. And I'd imagine it's the same type of focus that you put into making these amazing products that you make every day.
I think looking at what Sipho's doing, there's a lot more skill goes into this than me making my whiskies. No, this is amazing. But you're right. Sipho's got to find that sweet spot. He's got to find where that balance is. And, that's exactly the same with what we try to do with our whiskies.
He doesn't want to talk to us, but I'm going to try and get a word in from him, because right now, whenever you talk to him, you break his focus, and that's exactly what we're not trying to do. Sipho, bro, where are we at? How are you feeling?
Yeah, at the moment, I'm focused on the element and getting the core straightened up and the balance. And it's hot right now when I'm speaking to you. But you know what, I'm going to cope and finish this. But yeah, it's just about finding the balance in life, I guess. And finding the vision.
Your work is down the Coke Bay Strip mostly, and a lot of people obviously take for granted how much goes into this. And again, last question, where do you want to end up with what you're doing right now?
Sure, I want to end up showing people there's a lot of things that you can do with rocks, and just to show them the beauty of it, the artist, and I just love it so much. And the passion towards it, the kids, it's like play and roll, like rock and science,
Yeah.
So yeah, it's just having fun and getting to know yourself and ending up where you are.
I think we've disturbed him enough. Andy, let's get out of here and leave him to do what he does.
Thanks, Sipho. Yeah, well, welcome back to these Three Ships whiskey, the fifth in our Masters collection. And I'm so actually proud to have Andrea Freber here with us, who is a colleague of mine, but also the head of our wine at Distill. And Andrea, I think, not too many people know that possibly I enjoy my wine as much as I enjoy my whiskey. So fantastic to have you with us, but I'd love you to tell us a little bit more about Shiraz as a grape varietal. What does it bring to the party?
Thanks, Andy. It's lovely to be here. So Shiraz is one of those really versatile varieties. It's used to make different styles of wine. You can use it to make Shiraz. You can also have sort of lighter styles with a little bit of residual sugar. And then obviously for people who really enjoy a full-bodied and more complex style, you can obviously have those big gutsy Shirazes. And a lot of the sort of flavor compounds and the characteristics that you pick up in the wine really depends on where you source your grapes from. So this is where in wine we talk about terroir. You've probably heard this term quite a lot.
It's popping up in whiskey now too.
Yeah. So it really does have a massive impact on the actual overall quality and characteristics of the wine that you eventually put into the bottle. So for example, we have Shirazes usually from sort of higher climates, higher altitudes, where we get a lot of the dark berry fruit. So that's where you're getting those black currants, the black cherries, and your plum characters from. And then if you've got Shiraz, it's planted in slightly sort of lower altitudes, you get a lot more red characteristics, your red currants, etc. And then Shiraz often has a very spicy element to it, and that's usually from vineyards that are closer to the ocean, where you've got your night temperatures as being a little lower during the ripening period, and you get beautiful sort of peppery characters coming through in those wines.
I don't think you know how relieved I am now, because I put my tasting notes up earlier, and I always said that the tasting notes is a guideline because everybody experiences things differently. But you've ticked about 5 boxes, which I said was I pick up in the whiskey. So I'm so glad about that one. A couple of the questions which came through to me were, why Shiraz or why are we doing the Masters Collection? What is different about that? How do you get inspiration in winemaking? What leads your thought pattern?
So there's a number of factors that actually play a role in that, but obviously terroir is a leading factor. The quality of your grapes is also critical. And then it's really important to actually understand your vineyards and get to know your vineyards. So we work very closely as a team, and with our viticulturalists and winemakers in the cellar, we kind of have an idea of the expected quality of particular blocks. So I think it's that understanding and constantly testing that eventually you're able to make really fantastic Shirazes.
Okay. And any good cultivars which I can maybe tap into you for Cask going forward?
Well, Shiraz is always a sort of a trusty what's the word I'm looking for? Choice, yeah. But it depends on what you're looking for and sort of the characteristics that you're after. Okay. But yeah, there's a number of opportunities which we should definitely investigate going forward.
If we look at, the South African, let's say, drinks industry at the moment, what sort of impact is current times on the wine industry?
Well, as you know, we're going through a bit of a rough time, but I think as an industry, we've got some plans in place, and as a company, we've got some plans in place. So we're really trying really hard to sort of work together and to put the industry back where it belongs. It's an incredibly important segment of our South African economy, and there are many livelihoods that depend on the wine industry. So I think if we stand together and actually implement those plans, hopefully we'll be out of this situation in a few years. It'll take some time, but I think we need to remain positive, and we need to encourage our consumers to carry on supporting South African wine and the drinks industry, and we'll get there.
If lots of people now, it always used to be the kind of in thing for wine and food pairings, and we're doing it more and more now with whiskey and food pairings. If somebody had to say to you, okay, with Shiraz, what sort of foods would you think complement Shiraz?
It all really depends on the style of the Shiraz, but if you just look at your sort of basic spicy, gutsy Shirazes, usually something that's got a spicy element to it works really, really well. And one of my personal favorites is actually having it with boerewors at a braai. That works pretty well too.
Okay, that's something to try for me next time. and also I can then maybe take some ideas from that with the whiskey too to kind of play around, because I'm sure this is going to be something which people want to try. So, Andrea, thanks for spending time from your busy schedule and coming through to join us on the wall, which is emptying very
Going well.
quickly. Yeah, and thanks very much.
You're welcome. Thanks so much, Andy.
So there are 38 bottles left. And the only question I actually have to ask, if you're sitting at home right now, do you have your bottle yet? So do the right thing, hop onto the site, make sure you've got SnapScan, make sure you've got Zapper to finish your payment. 38 bottles left. Send us your questions as well. We're still hanging out with none other than the best in the game for me, Mr. Andy Watts. He's telling us all about this amazing, amazing product that we're launching today. We've got your tweets coming through at 3ShipsSA, hashtag Shiraz Cask Finish, at Freethinker. Some Scotch distilleries and bourbon brands have their warehouses by the sea or ocean. The whiskey enthusiasts confirm the impact of a coastal climate in the whiskey. Can we see a project from 3 Ships Whiskey aged in Western, Eastern, and I would imagine he didn't finish off his tweet, but basically on the coast.
On the coast. That's actually, it's a good idea.
Yeah.
If we could find warehousing, probably look at maybe some of our vineyards in the coastal areas and ask for a little bit of space in a store to do an experiment. But yeah, he's right. There are distilleries which lay claim to that saltiness which they pick up from maturing in the sea air.
Yes.
But at this stage we haven't done it. But it's
who
never
knows
a long
what the future
time.
holds? Yeah, who knows what
never's a
the
long
future
time.
holds? Keep those tweets coming through. It's at 3ShipsSA. And I would imagine, as we're going through the tweets, I'll take one more now in a bit, but it must be incredible for you, Andy, to watch, like, for instance, these bottles disappear so quickly year on year. It kind of speaks to the quality of the product and how people get excited. And the fact that we've got a number of people online tweeting and giving their suggestions and wanting to see the product progress must feel good.
Yeah, well, I think it's testament to what we're trying to do. And yeah, it's almost like it sets the bar now for us at the distillery that, what's next, and,
Yes.
and we've got to keep going. So, we're in this now for the long run with the consumer, and yeah, we will each year try to come up with something unique and outdo ourselves, as they say.
Definitely. A Friday on Twitter says, can you please tell us the cask composition, maturation, timeframes, etc., and how many casks were eventually used to yield the 2,900 bottles that 3 Ships has put together?
Sure, that's an interesting question for me to remember all that now. Cask composition is quite easy. There is the first 8 years were in American oak casks. Those would be originating out of the bourbon industry in the United States. What we do is we use casks of varying ages. We call them fills. So if it's a first fill, that means it's straight from the bourbon industry.
Gotcha.
If it's second fill, it means we filled it once after it's come out of the bourbon industry. In this particular case, we've got a 10% first fill composition in the original American oak, which it was matured into. And then we transferred that completely across the selected barrels, then completely across to seasoned Shiraz casks, where I believe the Shiraz was in those casks for between 12 and 18 months before they came to me. So I don't know if that answers the question for Friday.
Yeah.
In terms of how many casks were eventually used to yield it, I'm having to think off the top of my head now, but I think it was something like 14 or 15 quarter casks, which went into putting together the total 294.
That is a lot. Still sending and taking all of your tweets at 3ShipsSA. Call me Gaza. What other casks lend themselves to well finishing 3 Ships whiskey?
Well, I think if you look at what we did, we started off with PX, which is Pedro Jimenez, the sherry cask. Then we tried the Pinotage red wine cask. And then we went Oloroso, again a sherry cask. Then Fino, a sherry cask.
Wow.
And this year we're into Shiraz. So, the sherries are popular finishes. We've done a collaboration with Whisky Brother, the leading specialist retail whiskey shop in South Africa last year, where we actually finished in a Moscato cask. So we are busy with trials, innovation in different cask styles. So yeah, that's part of the fun is looking for what is going to be next if we are going to kind of keep this trend of something different, be it the age, the cask composition, or the finish of the product.
Got you. Still taking all of your tweets. And for me, it's incredibly amazing. And also remember, while you're online right now, we are tracking the amazing work of Sipho Njengezi. We'll catch up with him in a bit. And we've only got 38 bottles yet left. So make sure you do the right thing. Hop onto the site, download SnapScan, download Zapper, and get yourself a bottle of this amazing Shiraz Cask finish from Three Ships Whiskey, man. It's really amazing. I got a chance to taste it earlier on. I've got one more question for you coming through. Edna Howie says, what sets James Sedgwick Distillery apart from other distilleries?
I think what the James Sedgwick Distillery, if we look at a few of what does set it apart, it is the only commercial whiskey distillery on the continent of Africa. And by commercial, there are one or two craft distillers who are starting to come through, and we encourage that. The more people, the bigger we can actually make the South African whiskey industry, and our footprint in the world becomes bigger. But at this stage, they're relatively small, selling maybe from their distillery. So by commercial, we mean available from most bottle stores in most towns throughout our country.
Gotcha.
Also, what makes us a little bit different to others is that we are a distillery which distills both malt whiskey and grain whiskey on the same premises. So what I mean there is, if you go to Scotland on holiday, there are 120 malt distilleries in operation, and you will probably visit a malt distillery.
Oh, wow.
With very nice copper pot stills, very romantic stories behind the whiskey. Where we've got that, but we've also got the other half, which is the grain. Because remember, we talked offset about the three different types of whiskey: malt whiskey, grain whiskey, and blended whiskey.
Yes.
So we're in the position to be able to create all three of those whiskies at the James Sedgwick Distillery.
Wow, that sets us apart. And if you didn't know, now you know. Keep sending us those tweets at 3ShipsSA, hashtag Shiraz Cask Finish, checking out the amazing work of Sipho Njengezi as we also take all your tweets. So keep them coming through. I've got another one from Aisha Reddy. She says, tell us about some of the other distilleries you've traveled to, because you've also had a decorated career, one you were sharing with me yesterday as well.
Yeah, listen, I've been very fortunate that I've visited many distilleries. There are still one or two bucket list places for me to go to. I mean, Ireland at the moment is probably the country where the most distilleries are coming online.
Yes.
And I've never been there. So that's one place I would love to visit before the end of my career would be Ireland. Another place I've not been to, which is big on the whiskey map, is Japan. But in terms of where I've been fortunate to visit the majority of distilleries in Scotland.
Yes.
I've spent time in America on the Bourbon Trail, so I visited a lot of the American distilleries, which are well known, and also in Europe. I spent quite a bit of time in Germany with Bain's whiskey, Bain's Cape Mountain whiskey, and that gave me the opportunity to visit a few distilleries in Germany. Germany has actually got more malt distilleries than what Scotland has. That's
wow.
A little known fact.
Yes.
But yeah, the Germans love their whiskey, particularly their malt whiskey, and it's a very fast growing industry there too. So there's still a lot of boxes to be ticked, but I have managed to visit.
Because I know for a fact, I mean, you work at the best distillery. I know that for sure. But I'm sure you have your personal favorites outside of that.
Yeah, listen, I was fortunate to go to Taiwan and visit Kavalan.
Yes.
Which again is one of the whiskies which is making a lot of noise on the New World stage. And in terms of just the operation there, kind of mind-blowing. It's a distillery which is in a climate which is intensely hot and humid.
Yes.
We talk about a 5% per year angel share loss. They're looking at 15% per year angel share loss. So you see very few aged whiskies coming out of Taiwan.
Yes.
And you can see that through their releases. So that to me was visually one of the most spectacular distilleries in terms of how they treat their visitors, where they take them through. And the distillery actually belongs to a very successful businessman. And when you finish it all off, you actually go into his kind of shop, which he finishes up. But the shop is more like a supermarket.
Oh, wow.
It's that big. and he's got I think it's the biggest coffee shop in Taiwan is actually at the distillery.
Oh, wow.
Because that's another one of his businesses is
Yes.
coffee. So yeah, that is it's probably my favorite outside of. If you take away the emotion, I mean, obviously when I learnt my
Yes.
trade, I spent time on the island of Isla at Beaumont. We now have Bunnahabhain as a part of our group, another spectacular distillery which has just received a great facelift. So it actually, the more I think about it, the more difficult it is
Yeah,
to say.
there's just too much out there.
There's just too much out there. I think the idea is, if I was Anna Reddy, is go and visit them.
Definitely. Zandinava says, how do we use American oak first before using Shiraz casks after?
Okay. Yeah, we touched on this earlier as well, is that when we choose a cask which has contained another liquid, be it wine or sherry, or even another whiskey, then what we're looking at is a finish. So American oak in the form of ex-bourbon barrels is probably 90 to 95% of all the wood used in the whole industry worldwide. And that's purely because in America, where bourbon is made,
Yes.
you may only use that cask once to make bourbon. Now, if you think of the biggest brand out there from the States, then you're looking at 1 million casks a year just for that brand.
Wow.
And after they've been used in maturation, they must be sold somewhere. So the American oak casks are the basis to most of the whiskey maturation throughout the world. And then we choose, like the Shiraz cask in this case, afterwards, because now you've got your base whiskey,
Yes.
and now you can just twist that. Remember, whiskey's a totally natural product.
Yes.
It's water, grains, and yeast. You may not add flavors, you may not add sugar.
Yes.
So the only way you can really influence the flavor after that maturation in the American oak is by introducing a different style of wood,
Got you.
whether it's a French oak or whether it's an American oak or whether it's a wine finish or a sherry finish or another spirit finish. It's just something which just twists that whiskey a little bit and points it in another direction.
I've got you. We got more of your tweets coming through. It's at 3ShipsSA, hashtag Shiraz Cask Finish. Atlas Spurred says, are there any plans to release a core range product with multiple cask influences?
Yeah, another great question. You know, when you innovate, you generally innovate with a small portion of your whiskey.
Yes.
You know, if you start gambling, you very rarely put your house on your first bet.
Yes.
So, you know, the core range is just that. That is what keeps the distillery ticking. So when I'm playing in the background in my secret store, Store 13, you know, I'm generally doing it with a few casks. In the case of Shiraz, it was probably the most casks I've took at one stage and put whiskey back into because it just appealed to me. We haven't used all of that whiskey, so there is still some in maturation. But I think what's interesting and what's becoming interesting going forward is that we are now starting to see what works well with our whiskey and also what the consumer likes with our whiskey.
Gotcha.
And, you know, if the demand is there, then it might be possible to scale up a little bit and instead of having these one-offs to start laying down for a core range. As we say, our industry is still so young.
Yes.
There's still so much to do, you know, and I just feel, you know, there just isn't enough time.
And interesting enough, when you do talk about the fact that our industry is young, you know, and across the whole industry, I'd want to find out from you as well, like, what are your hopes for the industry going forward? I mean, never mind the fact that it's the whiskey industry, but the alcohol industry wide has been affected, number one, by COVID. There are young people growing into the industry that I'm sure are growing under you as well. What do you think the future looks like?
Yeah, well, listen, I mean, I'm in the twilight of my career, but I feel very strongly that our whiskies are in the dawn of theirs.
Yes.
There is so much waiting for South African whiskey in the years going forward. I mean, 3 Ships now, we've had a lot of pressure. Again, social media is a fantastic thing in certain senses.
Yes.
And we've had pressure from overseas people to, you know, why can't we get 3 Ships? Why can't we get your whiskies? And 3 ships are now busy at the same time. It's such an exciting period for us that 3 ships are now launching into Europe and the UK a 12-year-old single malt.
Wow.
Our first venture offshore.
Yes.
And, incredibly exciting because if this proves to be popular, successful, accepted by, a small portion of that population which is over there, it can just help us break down the perceptions which our own people have about the quality of our whiskies. So if the rest of the world is asking for our whiskies,
Yes.
then maybe, even on our own doorstep, especially in these times when we're saying everybody's had it tough, let's look to support local. The wine campaign in overseas with, if you can purchase a bottle of South African wine, I thought was fantastic.
Yes.
Even though we couldn't even buy it here in this country, we were kind of encouraging that to happen.
To keep the
and
industry
hopefully
going,
now
yeah.
more people have seen, but wow, South African wine is actually pretty cool.
Yes.
Let's continue that. And now by not being in the hands of just a few people who travel and take in the odd bottle, now that we're going to make 3 ships available in the UK, who knows what's going to happen in the next few years.
Tells you there's a bright future. We've got another tweet coming through. Simon_Dames. Of course, you love all your children, but which of the past Masters Collection releases are your favorite? Aside from this one.
Yeah. Yeah, that's Simone who worked with us and is now, I think it is, who's now moved across to the UK.
Yes.
So the nights are closing in and the weather's cold there.
Yeah.
Which one is my favorite out of the Masters Collection? I think to me it's got to be the Pinotage Cask finish.
Yes.
Even though the PX was the first and the icebreaker, the Pinotage was actually something I wanted to do many years ago.
Yes.
And that's where I mentioned earlier the patience has come into my makeup over the years. Because back then, I was probably wanting to move faster than what the market was moving.
Yes.
And our marketing team kind of reined me back then and said, listen, if we launch a whiskey with a wine finish, it's just going to fly over people's heads.
Yes.
They won't understand it. Because you think about it, our first whiskey live in South Africa, I think was 2000 or 2001.
Yes.
And that was the first real attempt to start educating consumers. Up until then, it was just about drinking.
Yes.
And there's so much more to whiskey than just drinking.
Yes.
So, with that education and the fact that I was held back by then, it just allowed that project of mine to become older. And when we eventually released it as a 15-year-old blend of malt and grains, which have been finished in Pinotage casks, I think that was just don't give up. Even though it would have been easy to just blend that away 15 years ago into other products, and nobody would have known that innovation even existed.
Yes.
But just to keep it there in the background until the time came, yeah, that holds a pretty special spot.
I guess sometimes innovation takes a little bit of patience.
Yeah, listen, they don't all work, eh?
Yeah.
Lisa? I mean, I can promise you, as many as what we launch, as many get put back into
Yeah.
into blended whiskey.
Yeah.
And some of it is because I've kind of forgot about it. It's overstepped its mark. Others are just because you see now, it's like a relationship.
Yes.
It's putting whiskies together and finishes is like a marriage. It's finding, the
sweet spot,
personalities which fit together. It's like Sipo with his stones there.
Yeah.
If they're not in the right spot, they come crashing down.
Very true. Very
And
true.
it's no different with whiskey. I keep saying it. It's alive. It's, when it's in that maturation cellar, that's when magic happens. It's when it's out of your hands and the climate comes into play and the type of wood and the finish of that wood, everything, and all we've got to do is to kind of put all those together and make it work.
And interestingly enough, as you talk about Sipo on the other side, it seems like he's getting things right. The patience kicking in, everything is working.
But we're not bothering him anymore.
No, we're not bothering him anymore. I think that's why it's working. You can continue sending us all of your tweets. We're on 3 Ships SA across all social media platforms. And then you can also use the hashtag Shiraz Cask Finish to fire all of your questions. Don't forget, we've got a couple of bottles left in the back right here, so make sure you get your bottle. Colby Wilkins sent us a question. How long have you been distilling whiskey?
Sure, I came into the industry in 1984. So we're looking at now, I'm entering my 37th year.
Wow.
I went across to Scotland in the late 1980s in an annual exchange for a few months to work with a company which were doing business with our business in South Africa back then. And I took over the manager of the James Sedgwick Distillery in 1991. So I think technically, if you want to say how long have I been responsible distilling for the whiskey for our business, it's now into its 29th, almost its 30th year.
Wow. Wow. It's amazing. At Three Ships Whiskey, don't forget to send us those tweets. We've still got a couple of bottles right behind us here. And don't forget, if you are struggling to make that payment, make sure you download SnapScan or Zapper. That's how you can complete your payment and make sure you get yourself your hands on one of these amazing 11-year-old Shiraz Cask finishes. It's a single malt. It's amazing. It's probably one of the most amazing whiskeys that I've tasted as well. And the best part, I got to taste it with the person that made it. So you can keep firing your questions at him. It's at Three Ships Whiskey with the hashtag Shiraz Cask Finish. I want to ask you one more question from my side. And I think you spoke about the concept of trial and error when you're putting together something like this. Outside of the whiskey industry, I know that there's a lot of innovation happening just in alcohol. What are some of the things that you've observed that you've gone, I like that what that alcohol segment is doing, I want to bring it into whiskey?
Yeah, I think we're entering into well, not entering, we've been in it for a few years now, but it's almost that instant gratification.
Yes.
So and it was after a visit to Australia that, I kind of noticed that they have a lot of their major brands, alcohol brands, are already canned.
Yes.
The mix is already there.
Yes.
And I see that, we're starting to enter that now in South Africa, but, we've still got a long way to go there. So I see that as being something big going forward. Also, lower alcohol.
Yes.
That's I'm not saying, that there are certain categories within our legislation. So, for example, to be called a whiskey, you must be above 43% alcohol by volume. There cannot be flavors added. There cannot be sugar added. So if you want to do something with whiskey as a base,
Yes.
then you would possibly have to move into another category, be it a spirit aperitif or a fortified alcohol drink, RTD.
Yes.
So those sort of things seem to be attracting a lot of questions, a lot of attention. So it's, it's a nice avenue away from the traditional side, which I think is worth exploring.
Yes. We've got another tweet. Julie93, thank you so much for sending it through. Do you have your own personal collection of whiskies? I'm 100% sure you do. You probably have some casks and barrels at home.
Yeah, I do. No, the barrels are too heavy to carry away. Otherwise, I would. Yeah. No, I do have a personal collection, but I'm also I'm a honorary member of a group of incredible people who love whiskey called the Whiskey Pigs.
Oh wow!
And their motto is "Drink all the whiskey."
Finish it all.
Okay, so it's not about having bottles on shelves which collect dust.
Yes.
And thinking that one day you're going to retire by selling that bottle.
Yes.
Their whole motto is enjoy the whiskey, share it with friends. So yes, I've got a decent whiskey collection, but not too many which are not opened. So
everything must get a taste.
Yeah, I mean, I'm fortunate in some of the cases, like, for example, the Master's Collection, where I, will purchase more than one bottle because I like to keep a bottle and then try. But if it's other whiskies, I've got if the right time is there, the right people are there, I will open any bottle in my collection.
I think earlier on, Anthea mentioned a little bit about pairing biltong with some of the products, and I would imagine like some of the dinners that I've gotten to go to, you get a lot of pairing dinners of late, for instance, with whiskey and different types of alcohol. For you, what do you love pairing the most with the product? Whenever you've made something and you go, I'm gonna get home and enjoy the fruits of my labor, but with what?
Again, we talked off screen about my tasting notes, and they're pretty simple.
Yes.
And my food choices are the same.
Yes.
I don't profess to be a good cook. I like to braai.
Yeah.
and I don't profess to be a food expert. I'm generally hungry.
Yeah.
So what I like to do is I like to give my whiskey to somebody who does understand and appreciate good food and how it works.
Yes.
And I can honestly say I don't think I've been disappointed. I mean, we've got a super lady who I've done a lot of work with over the years called Linda Christensen. And Linda has got this knack of putting together snacks,
Yes.
but which pair perfectly with whiskey. So it doesn't have to be a 5-course meal.
Yes.
And then, you know, we've done really lavish dinners where our whiskies have been given to, you know, Michelin chefs,
Yes.
who again have then created incredible dishes with our whiskey. So, you know, I think in the hands of the right person, they will find the right food to complement this whiskey.
Absolutely. And talking about complementing this amazing whiskey, we've got an amazing guy complementing the concept of finding exceptional balance. Let's see what Sipho's up to. And we are back. Hope you're having an awesome afternoon. And today we've been checking out the amazing work. He's been trying to find exceptional balance. And Andy and I are in absolute awe. Sipo, a job well done, bro.
Thank you very much.
First and foremost, early on we weren't able to talk to you as much as we wanted to because we were just like, guys, leave. Tell us a little bit about how you got into this in the first place.
So the first place is like concentration. You have to concentrate.
Yeah.
And I see myself like in future-wise, where I see my balance. And as a human being, like in life, we have to balance and to able to cope with life and things around in change. Yeah.
The amazing thing for me is that when I grew up, right, I used to throw a lot of stones. I used to pick up a lot of rocks, but it never crossed my mind to do this as an art. What fascinated you about the concept of balancing rocks that made you make a career of it?
Yeah, so it basically talks about my background, and like each rock that I pick up, it talks about my life.
Yes.
It talks about the tumbles that I have been going through difficult times, the different journeys in my life. So like it just brings me back and just remembers me like the person where I come from and where I'm heading going in front. Yeah.
And talking about where you're heading now, Andy, I'm sure you can appreciate what Sipo's done here. You know, it takes incredible discipline, it takes incredible concentration and focus. You know, and for him, luckily, it doesn't take 11 years to put it together. For you, watching what he does, how does it inspire you in your work?
Yeah, I mean, if you see these as stones, rocks in the individual capacity, then you would never think that this was possible.
Yes, that's
true. So I think, again, it comes back to that, let your mind be open.
Yes.
And, don't see it as an individual rock or a stone, see what can it, be paired with and created with. And I think that is what's amazing about this is that, the sum of the parts here is awesome.
That's amazing.
But a rock or a stone on its own doesn't seem, it's just a rock or it's a stone.
Until it's with something.
Until it's put together like this.
Now, most of your work is down the Cork Bay Strip, right?
Yeah, most of them, yeah.
And where else do you do your work? Is it just something that you decide, I'm driving down next to the beach and I see something?
Yeah,
how do you choose where you work?
So most of the times I do like on my spare times when I'm free, like on a Sunday. And it's like kind of like a meditation in the morning, and I could relax my mind, just calm down, and just think about things that I've been going through last week, and what are you trying to plan and trying to influence other people's life also, because it's all about this pandemic also made me different and made me to understand who I am, the person, and to work with people and understand the people that I'm working with around. And I'm like talking to you guys now. It's such an honor and awesome, amazing,
Now, last question. You talk about the fact that you work with a lot of people. You love to center yourself as well. Where can one find you on social media? Because I'm sure other people will spot your work. Now they'll want to tag you and say, I actually saw it.
Yeah, cool. So basically, I run a fitness program. It's called the Sunrise. The name is called Fitness with Sipo on Instagram. On Facebook, you can find me. So same name. And so I do group sessions at Colpe, and people are loving it. And I just, as I said, the community vibe. It's such an honor to be around Colpe and Colveli, and just the people around, whoever comes in Colpe.
Bro,
Just feel
well
welcome.
done again.
I really appreciate so
Make
much.
sure you go check it out on social media. It's Fitness with Sipo, and this is amazing work, man. It's all about finding that exceptional balance. And we're going to take more of your questions in a bit. Don't forget to tweet us at 3ShipsSA with the hashtag Shiraz Cask Finish. That is incredible, hey? I swear, if I could do something like that, I'd be rocking all the time. So keep sending us all your questions at 3ShipsSA, hashtag Shiraz Cask Finish, man. We're celebrating this amazing bottle launch, and we've still got some bottles right back behind us, so make sure you go onto the site, download SnapScan, download Zapper. That's how you can complete your purchase. We've got only a few bottles left, and trust me, you want to be one of the people to get your hands on this first. Let's go into the questions again. I've got some tweets. One is from Dunks SG1. Do you get your wine casks predominantly from one wine farm, or would you source from anywhere? Also, where do you get your sherry casks from?
Okay, I must say the quality of the questions today has been tense.
Impeccable.
Yeah, it has. Very good. In terms of our wine casks, I mean, we're part of the bigger Distel group, so we've got some stunning wine estates where, you know, I'm fortunate to be able to pull some casks from. And that is the source of the majority of my wine cask, comes from within our own company.
Yes.
In terms of our sherry casks, we deal with a company called Miguel Martin,
Yes.
who operates out of Shiraz in Spain. And yeah, it's probably every 2 years or so we will bring a container of casks in from Miguel. And that's where the sherry casks come from. So
Wow, that's amazing, because I would imagine like sourcing all the different casks from everywhere, it takes quite a lot of work to do that as well, because you're trying to choose the best of the best for what you want to create.
yeah. I think what's happened a lot now in the wine industry is that, you know, more and more wineries are moving away from casks. So, you know, the option of casks is becoming less.
Yes.
Because there are alternative wood treatments now, whether it's chips or staves,
Yes.
which they can use to give the same effect. So, you know, to manage to get hold of wine casks is not as easy as what maybe a lot of people might think.
Yes.
So going forward, it's, you know, I'll be working very closely with Andrea
Yes.
to try and find out, you know, is any new cultivars, anything that could work with our whiskies. For future releases, possible
Gotcha.
releases.
Got you. Nikki S, she asks, obviously we've asked this question where it all started for you. And one thing where I'd like to find out, not only where it started for you, because yesterday you mentioned that you had a life before you decided to do this for a living. I'm interested, first and foremost, I'm sure people at home would love to hear a part of that story and where it all began, but how that then influenced you to get into what you do now.
Yeah, like I said to you, I was in the right place at the right time on more than one occasion.
Yes.
And just like Sipo said there, you know, when sometimes you think that there's no way forward.
Yes.
You know, I was in that position. I came to South Africa for the first time in 1982 as a professional cricketer.
Yes.
Escaping a cold English winter, expecting to just spend 6 months here. I did that for 3 years and then got released from my club in the UK. In other words, I got fired.
Yes.
Out of work, and the opportunity just came to stay here in
But
South
you're
Africa.
understating this a little bit, because you mentioned to me yesterday, there's a couple of huge names that you mentioned, right? The likes of Peter Kirsten, or the people that you used to play cricket back in the day with. The likes of Michael Holding, that's who you lost your job for, you know? So it's not bad at all. And funny enough, the disciplines of sport do play a role in the concept of patience, of staying focused, staying practiced, and staying ready. And how does it align with what you do every day now?
Well, I've got a son-in-law who's also in the fitness business like Sipo.
Yes.
And Jacques' motto and his business is called 3D Fitness.
Yes.
Now, the 3D stand for discipline, determination, and
Discipline, determination, dedication. Gotta be dedication.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's the 3Ds. And he lives his life by that. And I found that if you actually stick to those three as personality traits,
Yes.
and, you know, you tag integrity onto that, you tag honesty onto that, you tag openness, then, you know, you're pretty much, doesn't matter if it's making whiskey or making anything or wanting to do anything,
Yes.
you're going to make a success of it.
Got you.
So, you know, I think Sipu embodies that incredibly by, not having the easiest of rides.
Yes.
But he kind of knows where he's going, and that to me inspires me,
Yes.
who's probably at the end of my career. But it just makes me feel nice to
See that the same discipline
absolutely
exists.
Yeah.
We've got another question from 88 Derek. Would you say you could contribute to the magnificent balance that you've managed to find with the 11-year-old single malt Shiraz to balance you had into practice as an ex-professional cricketer? You see, I've already given away that secret.
Yeah. I think back then, if I look at cricket back in the early 80s, it was definitely not the game it is now.
Yes.
If I think could I have done things differently in my cricket career, yes, I could. I could have worked harder. I could have been more dedicated, disciplined, determined. And I think after getting that, the slight knockback with being released from Derbyshire and not making it to play for England or to make it a lifelong career, I think that made me kind of rethink a few things of what I did wrong in that cricket career, and very few of them had anything to do with my ability of playing. And I believe that strongly, that at that level of cricket, it isn't ability which is the difference, it's the way your mind works.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, I think I learned a lot from those lessons, which, obviously I was a fast bowler, so I was also very aggressive, and, everything which does not come with whiskey. So again, over the years, that's quietened down too, and I'm, a lot more subdued, and yeah, life is there one day at a time now.
Got you. We've got more questions coming through. Don't forget to fire them at us. It's at 3Ships SA with the hashtag Shiraz Cask Finish. Perry 223 says, what are the main challenges when trying to distill this unique and exceptional single malt?
Well, I think, the biggest challenges are our climate in South Africa. If you look at malt whiskey, there's 5 stages to making the malt whiskey. There's the milling of the barley, the mashing of the grist, which is the barley which has been milled. It's fermentation, distillation, and then maturation. Those are the 5 stages, whether you're in Scotland, whether you're in South Africa, wherever you are in the world, if you're making it by the legislation, that's the 5 stages. So, those aren't negotiable. But like I mentioned earlier, I came back from Scotland and I wanted to do exactly the same as what I'd been taught in Scotland.
Yes.
Where, for example, we'll just take fermentation. They will pitch their yeast, they will add their yeast to the sugary liquid, which is the mashed barley. They will add that yeast to there at around about 12 to 13 degrees centigrade.
Yes.
And then the yeast will, 2 byproducts of the fermentation process, as the yeast works away, is heat and carbon dioxide. So now you would have the temperature rising in the beginning, and it probably go up to 24, 25, and then it would start to cool down again. So the yeast is operating at the bottom end of its comfort zone, but it's still happy.
Yes.
Now you come to South Africa and you want to do the same. But we would never get 12 or 13 degrees. We're starting at 25, 26 degrees. And then you put the yeast into that liquid, the temperature rises, it takes the yeast out of its comfort zone. In other words, then it starts making off flavors, and you find it very difficult to get consistent fermentations. Yeah. So I made a lot of mistakes in the beginning of my career, and we joked about it yesterday that, if there had been, like in Scotland, a whiskey distillery in every town, then I would have probably been fired within 6 months. But there wasn't. So as long as I learned, and as long as I could, kind of adapt our processes, and that's what we did. We started looking, okay, how can we keep our temperatures down during fermentation? And we just looked at wine. We will cool our fermenters.
Gotcha.
Not done in the majority of whiskey producing countries because it's not necessary.
Sure.
But by doing that here, all of a sudden we bring our yeast down into where it's really happy, not where it's half happy, where it's incredibly happy in its ultimate optimum temperature zone, and then we let it do its work for us, and we can do that day in, day out by keeping a track. That's just one part of the process. But yeah, that's difficult.
I'm sure we're going to get a lot of this question, and there's one that I'm going to tag onto this. What does the future of 3Ships Whiskey look like?
As I mentioned, I think it's bright.
Yes.
Yeah, I think it's, if you, again, back to that maturation, how long does it take? If you think about it, the whiskey which is now going into our basic brands in our core range was distilled 3 years ago.
Yes.
And we're also learning each day. We're also looking at new techniques within the legislation. So, I think going forward, the whiskies which are going to come out of maturation in 3 years' time are going to be better than, or as good, if not better than what they are now, which just means that those whiskies we will be able to leave for longer as well and create other interesting cask finishes or aged products without a cask finish. There is so much still to be done in our industry.
So I know a lot of people have gone onto social today. They've gone onto the site. They've purchased their bottle. A couple of people would be unhappy because they didn't get their hands on it yet. Worry not, because around, you mentioned the second week of November, it's going to hit the general trade. But the question I wanted to ask you, let's start teasing. I'm very interested what would be next? This was the 5th one, 6th one. Is there something that you've got in your back pocket yet, or is it something that you still need to think about?
Well, I think the definite thing is there will definitely be a 6th one.
Yes.
What it is, again, we'll sit down as a team. I'll put on the table what I think is suitable whiskies, and it'll be a team decision. And who knows? Maybe we do the same this year, and we take 2 or 3 of these whiskies to a group of knowledgeable consumers at a social function without them even knowing it, and
see
just
what
say,
they like.
What do you think of these 3?
Got you.
It's interesting because I've done a couple of collaborations with Private Barrel Company and a company overseas called Boutique Whiskey. And do you know what's interesting? And I've learned this in my career, is that if somebody asks me for samples, I send them samples, but I just number them 1, 2, 3, 4, or letter A, B, C, D.
Yes.
Because people do drink with their eyes.
Yes.
People see labels, and that then clicks that subliminal switch that this is a great whiskey.
Absolutely.
Because it's the label. And you walk past what could be fantastic whiskies because it's not in your face.
Exactly. That's a very, very, very interesting insight. Daniel P _77. What is peat, and where does the peat in whiskey come from?
Sure. Okay, peat is decomposed leaves, trees, vegetation, which over millions of years has formed a layer on the Earth's surface.
Oh, wow.
And it's generally found in the highlands and islands of Scotland. And it used to be a form of fuel for housing. They would cut the peat out. It's like a moss. It's like a peat bog. So they would cut the peat out like in brick sizes and then let it dry. And then they would burn that in their homes to keep them warm in winter. It's got a very high calorific value. So it burns very, very hot. But it also gives off an incredible aromatic smell.
Yes.
And if you go through the highlands of Scotland on a winter's evening, you'll find this aroma floating around the valleys and the towns.
Yes.
And that's the people still burning, some of them burning peat.
Wow.
And where it comes from is, in the process of preparing the barley for distillation, then you have to dry the barley after the malting process.
Yes.
And that used to be done typically by drying it over a peat fire. So the smoke would rise from the peat fire and it would permeate itself into the barley whilst it was drying it, and therefore then when you took that barley you would have carried over some of that smoke flavor with it. Gotcha. So that's where it comes from. So a lot of the barley nowadays, modern days, can be dried with almost like industrial hair dryers. So there will be no peat present.
Yes.
So you get whiskies which don't have that smokiness. Because I spent a lot of time at Bowmore in my formative years, I have this kind of a soft spot for smoky, peaty whiskies. I enjoy them.
Yes.
And, I always joke about it that whilst I'm the master distiller, that's probably what people's going to have to put up with.
I've got you. I've got you. We've got more questions coming at 3 Ships SA. Kaya M _ZA. What is the difference between chill filtered and unchilled filtered whiskey?
Yeah, a few years ago, most malt whiskies used to be chill filtered because people, they want to see a bright, aesthetically clear product.
Yes.
If something looks hazy in the bottle, then, whoa, what's this? But then, people started saying, but whoa, wait a bit. What is this haze inside the bottle? And this haze inside the bottle is the fatty acid esters which are formed during fermentation and which remain in the distillation process. And they contribute a lot to the flavor.
Yes.
So now by chill filtering, you're actually forming this haze, this colloidal haze of these esters, and then you're filtering them out. So you're actually removing flavor from the whiskey. So it's about 10 to 15 years ago now where we started, or not we, the industry started the trend of non-chill filtered whiskies.
Gotcha.
Just meaning that it's more in its natural form, which is what people want whiskey to be in.
Yes.
And you're retaining then the maximum amount of flavor you can, whilst making sure that the product is clean of all possible foreign matter,
Yes.
but not removing the flavor.
Got you. Davis for Days says, what's the best way to store whiskey? Because I'm sure everyone at home right now, they're going to be getting their bottle of Three Ships whiskey. They're going to want to put it somewhere. They're going to want to store it the right way.
Yeah. Listen, whiskey's not like wine. It has certain conditions. I would keep it in a cool, darker place, out of direct sunlight, out of high temperatures. But it's not something which you're going to say, oh, I've got to drink it in 2 years.
Yes.
A sealed bottle of whiskey can last a lifetime.
Oh, wow.
If you've opened the bottle of whiskey and you store it again, closed in a cupboard, again, you're talking 10, 15 years. A lot of people do believe that the more you drink out of the bottle, then they do find or they experience a little bit of oxidation on the whiskey itself. Normally, if a bottle's opened with friends of mine, it doesn't stay long enough to oxidate.
Yeah.
But those are things to possibly be aware of. But it's not a general. I wouldn't say it's a general concern. If you keep it in a cool, dark cupboard or a cool cupboard out of direct sunlight, temperatures which are not abnormally high, then you can enjoy that whiskey for many years.
Love it. Keep sending us those questions. Temba NT_90. How does this compare to the Three Ships whiskey 10-year-old single malt?
Yeah, I think we've talked today about, I've mentioned a couple of times about the DNA of the malt. And at the moment, the Three Ships 10-year-old single malt is coming out by vintage. And each year, it's changing slightly.
Yes.
And I think that was one of the main reasons why I said I'd like to do these vintages, to again portray that whiskey is not a commodity. It's not toothpaste. It's not shampoo.
Yes.
Each year, it can differ slightly, exactly like wine can do in the vineyards.
Yes.
The same block doesn't deliver the same wine every year.
Absolutely.
And whiskey, I believe, is the same. So by doing the cultivar, it actually shows that even in the same maturation stores, the conditions over that 10-year period can give you a slightly different product. It also gives you the opportunity to learn from different vintages and say, okay, for this next vintage, which is coming out in 2 years' time or 3 years' time, I now want to put a little bit more new wood in, or I want to move it into a little bit of older wood, etc. So that is all open. So in terms of comparing this to the 10-year-old, I would say that the base whiskey is very, very similar. It would be a vintage style, so it's slightly different, not exactly the same, but same DNA, and the difference is just that little twist at the end with the Shiraz cask finish.
Got you. Carl MP, tell us about some of the distilleries that you've traveled to. Yes, we've answered this question extensively earlier on. And you also even mentioned some of your favorite. And the interesting part now, if I'm a consumer in South Africa and I want to experience some of the best distilleries in South Africa, where should I go? What do I need to experience? Because I know that you've visited some of those as well.
Yeah, well, in terms of South Africa, as I mentioned earlier, the whiskey industry is still young, and there are very, very few whiskey distilleries in South Africa.
Yes.
There are a few craft distillers. Whether they're not open to the public or not, I don't know. But it would be pretty easy to Google.
Yes.
Quite a lot here in the Western Cape, and I believe up in Gauteng. A lot of gin distilleries now, which you can go
up,
to.
Yes.
Yep. And I mean, they look beautiful.
Yes.
They're small, they're craft, they're niche. Whereas when you move to our sort of scale, and we are open. The James Hedrick Distillery, okay, at the moment in COVID conditions, unfortunately not. But when everything moves through, the distillery does open on a Friday and a Saturday with fixed time slots for small, intimate tours.
Yes.
And what makes, I think a tour different to the JSD, apart from Simon, our Brando manager, who is a superb character, I think what the big difference is that you're actually in the process itself. Yes. So you're there, you've got your tasting, you've got a food pairing, but you're also actually going into the still house, and the one which knocks everybody out is when they move into the maturation store, and we talk about this angel share. Yes. But to actually experience it, to stand in that store and to breathe in the alcohol of 20,000 casks which are in maturation, it's just something which I believe you will never forget when you step out. So, as I said, the JSD is a great point to visit when we're out of COVID conditions. Yes. But up until then, find out who's doing it on a craft basis close to you.
Yeah, and go check it out.
Go and check them out and support them. Buy a bottle.
Mr. _B63, what are the main challenges when trying to distill this unique and exceptional single malt? This is another question that we answered, but I want to add on to it as well. I'm sure when you are putting things together, much like Sipo, things go out of sync. When you try the first thing, it doesn't work out too well. What's your ethos as a team now when you guys start putting together product year on year, and it doesn't necessarily work out the way that you want? Is it a matter of going back to the drawing board and going, which direction do we go? Or do you kind of like power through and hope that it lands?
I think back to the question about what are the challenges, and just to finish that off, that if you don't get it right in the beginning, you can't fix it.
Oh, wow.
So one of the questions I learned, and we'll use fermentation again as the example, is I learned very early in my career that you cannot distill a good spirit from a bad fermentation.
Wow.
You can distill a bad spirit from a good fermentation. So if you don't get your fermentation right, you're not going to fix it. But if you've got a good fermentation, you've still got a couple of stages where you can mix it up. So the bottom line to that is that, I think our team is so quality driven that we wouldn't even bother marketing with anything which we don't feel is up there. Yes. So those kind of innovations which don't work, those batches which aren't quite hitting the mark, they'll get dead and buried, and you won't know about them.
True. And another very interesting question from Roller89, which earlier on I remember you spoke about how when you sample the product, you tend to number it so people can't see the brand. But for you, what would you say makes a whiskey collectible, where you're like, brand, yes, but also taste the product itself? Why would it be something that you want at home?
Yeah, I think what makes a whiskey collectible, for some people it's the brand. For some people it's the uniqueness. For some people it's, the amount of bottles which are released. Yes. I think the underlying factor has got to be quality. It's got to be good whiskey. And I think that's what's got people coming back and back for the Three Ships Masters collection. Yeah. Because that first, when we talked about it, the first one, the 800 bottles, and we took a whole day to get rid of the 400 which were on the wall. We thought, wow, is this going to work? Now we've got people who really want to get hold of that first one because it's missing from their collection because they weren't a part of it. So I think it can be the story behind it as well, which makes it collectible. Yes. You want to be one of those few people. Yes. And that's when you've only got 2,900 bottles.
And you've got to get in on the action immediately.
You've got to be there. You've got to be in the know. And yeah, it's working.
We're still taking all of your questions. You can send them through. It's at 3ShipsSA. The hashtag is Shiraz. Let me get this right because I'm going to mess it up. Shiraz Cask Finish. That's the hashtag. Make sure you get your tweets in. So what do you do when you aren't making whiskey?
Yeah, I'm still pretty active.
Yes.
I played a little bit of old man's cricket up until a couple of years ago when, to be honest, work, started taking up that time. I was traveling so much, so I had to give up my place in the Golden Oldies cricket team. Yes. But now I tend to find my solace on my mountain bike. Yes. I spend a lot of time on my mountain bike around Wellington specifically because it's our town. I've got this hashtag the social media saying, "Where did your bike take you this morning?"
Gotcha.
and normally over a weekend I'll just post a random bike picture because it's my thinking time. You know, you're out there, you're on your own, you can clear your mind. My wife works on Saturday mornings, or most of them, so it's a good time for me to prepare myself for the rest of the weekend with her and give her dedicated time and not bring some of the, you know, the worries from work home.
Absolutely.
I enjoy a little bit of golf too, but I'm not so good at that after a mountain bike accident. But I still love golf. Yeah.
Let's take more of your questions. You can fire them at us at Three Ships Whisky SA at Max44. What's your favorite pairing for the Shiraz cask finish?
Well, we still got to get there.
Yeah, I actually can't wait to find out what is the best thing to pair with it.
Yeah, I think that the fun is trying.
Yes.
And as Andrea said when she was talking about Shiraz as a grape varietal, you know, you get different styles of Shiraz, but you know, coming down to the probably most popular style is that spicy notes which come through. So, you know, look to complement it with something which is spicy, be it, you know, kind of a spicy Cajun chicken, or even a Cajun calamari style could possibly work with it. So savory crackers, the different cheeses. There's so many cheeses out there now, which you can work your way through. So the fun is enjoying the whiskey and playing around.
Got you. We're still taking all of your tweets. We're hanging out here, man, and we've got a few bottles left. Make sure you go onto the site, grab yourself one, and fire us all of your tweets. It's at Three Ships SA, and use the hashtag Shiraz Cask Finish. And as we're about to wrap up, the one thing that I've always been very interested in, with every Masters collection that you've done now, with this one being the 5th, right? What kind of feeling do you want to always walk away with when you've done a Masters collection?
Yeah, I think it's like most things. When the build-up to the event is, you know, you're kind of full of positivity. This is going to work. It's like starting your first business.
Yeah.
And then just before we go on set and you see the wall there, you kind of think, you know, is this going to work?
Yes.
And then when you see the whiskies going, you think it's fantastic.
Yes.
But then there's a second phase to this, because now everybody's bought the whiskey.
Yes.
Now I like the feedback when it comes back.
Yes.
And as we said, whiskey's subjective. So some people are going to say, okay, we've got the bottle, I open it up, yep, it's okay, but it's not my style. Or some people are going to say, this is probably the best they've tasted.
Yes.
So, you know, I kind of take that feedback, the good and the not so good,
Yes.
and kind of work them together again, and, you know, get my mind going for what is going to come in the future. How can I change and tweak slightly?
Got you. Got more of your tweets coming through. Kingston NK, what got you interested in whiskey at first, even to begin with?
Well, when I was a cricketer and I came to South Africa, I got no interest in whiskey. When I got that first part-time job with Stellenbosch Farmers Winery, working in the spirits blending cellar, working with all spirits, gin, vodkas, canes, brandies, whiskies, that was my first interaction really with whiskey. And then that opportunity to go back to Scotland,
Yes.
To work there. And, you know, I could have just seen it as work or an opportunity, but, you know, the people in Scotland were so open to me. They shared their deepest secrets. They couldn't do enough.
Yes.
And I think it was their passion which kind of infected me while I was there working with them. And I kind of brought it back saying, you know, you guys, you're tops, you really are. But you don't have the prerogative to be the only ones who make great whiskey. So
Absolutely.
I think that's what got me going was the guys in Scotland, and then coming back to kind of prove a point.
Such an incredible story. And funny enough, your son, like you mentioned earlier on, chose a completely different career, you know. What would you say, like, if I'm a young person watching this as well, and I'm partially interested in the industry, what is it that, one, if there's anything that I should study, that I should get myself equipped with, what do I need to be ready with as a human being to get into this industry?
Well, I think, you know, there's a couple of directions which will give you a head start, and that's chemical engineering,
Yes.
microbiology,
Yeah.
food science, Any of those will give you a good solid background into the industry. But I think the other thing is, depending on where you want to finish up in the industry, is that you might have the qualification, but you don't use a lot of it.
Yes.
But I would say if you've got any of those as a base product, and you can find your way into the liquor industry.
Yes.
Once you're in the industry, then there is room to maneuver. But you need to have something which somebody else doesn't have.
Yeah. And funny enough, this is something that was mentioned earlier on. It's a question from Donald Nduli. He's asking, what does the term angel share refer to?
Yeah, during that period of maturation, that aging in wood of the spirit to become whiskey, which is a minimum of 3 years, then the alcohol evaporates each year. And in our climate in South Africa, we lose around 4.5% to 5% a year. Scotland, 1.5% to 2%, just because of the climate.
Yes.
And as it leaves the cask, then obviously that evaporates to the heavens.
Yes.
So that's where the term the angel share comes in. And if you are there in the store and you experience the smell, you can then understand what it means.
It's a very interesting
when we had
term.
the lockdown, we couldn't leave our premises. I actually stay on the distillery. So I created a kind of a mountain bike route
Yes.
around the distillery just to stop me going crazy. And one of the routes led me between the two stores, and I called it Angel's Alley.
Oh, wow.
Because when you rode the bike between the two stores,
Yeah.
even though we weren't allowed to go in the stores, that the distillery was totally shut down.
Yes.
Even though you weren't allowed to go in, you could still
Smell,
pick up the aromas. Yeah.
Oh, wow. We're taking more of your tweets. 3 Ships SA. Use the hashtag Shiraz Cask Finish. We're hanging out here with Andy Watts, and he's telling us all the amazing stories around the process, his career, and of course, how you can enjoy this amazing bottle of 3 Ships whiskey that it's a single malt for me that's probably the most different that I've ever seen. 11 years old with that Shiraz Cask Finish. So make sure you send us all of your tweets as well as your questions. I got one more from my side. I know we talked about a little bit about how you want to enter the industry. I know that, for instance, right now with everything that's happening with the pandemic, you're seeing a lot of industries struggle. And it's going to be a very interesting time to get out of the pandemic. What kind of things do you foresee? Where are we going to have to change as a people, as an industry, and how do you think it's going to affect whiskey?
Yeah, that's a difficult one.
Yeah.
I mean, I stayed away from home last night for the first time since the lockdown started for a business trip.
Wow.
And to be in a 500-bedroom hotel and you're the only customer in what we say is returning to normal is a little bit of a shock. So
Yeah.
I don't think normal as we knew it will be back very soon.
Yes.
I think as a country, it isn't just about whiskey, it's about all of our products. So that support local, really, if you're going to go into a shop and buy something, try and spend a little bit more time and look at the tag, and if it says made in SA or made in Africa, then look to buy it. We will get through.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what 3 Ships is all about too, and that's tenacity. It's about that never die attitude. That's a South African thing. So I think we'll get through it. I wish I had the answer for you.
I don't
After
think
yesterday, I think I've moved myself 6 steps back.
it's such an interesting time to be alive. But keep sending us all of those questions. Hashtag Shiraz Cask Finish. And on our Twitter, it's at 3 Ships SA. I think we're going to take a bit of a break, and then we'll come back with more of your questions. And we are back, but we are not back for long, because the one thing for me that's been really, really amazing, Andy, over those last few hours, one, I think I got to learn about an incredible product, got to learn about an incredible person as well as an incredible business. I did tease or ask you, what are some of your future aspirations around the sixth Masters collection? You didn't give up too much, you know. I'm going to try and ask you that question one more time, you know. Is there anything for you that specifically you're like, you know what, maybe this could be the next thing?
Well, I think if you look at the Masters collection from the start in 2015, it was single malt, blend, single malt, blend, single malt. So I think that might give you an indication of what next year will be.
We're going to blend this thing up.
Yeah. What
Can't
yet?
wait.
I don't know. It's still in the mix, but I think we can maybe look at a blend again next year.
Looking forward to it, and again, all of it very well done on an amazing release. I think the response has been overwhelming. I'm really, really grateful for you sharing all of your incredible insights, as well as sharing with everyone at home, and being so welcoming. I mean, this is your stage and you let me on it, so thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, guys, so after an overwhelming response, our event is coming to an end. As you can see, we've got a few bottles right behind me, and everyone is trying to get their hands on them. So we're going to put them on sale on the James Sedgwick Distillery e-commerce platform. So if you follow 3 Ships SA right now, and you can find out when those will be available. So do the right thing, follow at 3 Ships SA, and you can get yourself one of these amazing bottles. It's been me, Loiso Mtebuka, as well as the amazing and the master himself, Andy Watts, and we're signing out. Thank you so much for joining us. Have an awesome rest of your day.